Hey guys, what's up? It's Gunthug here. Getting a start tonight on what I hope to be a weekly recurring segment. I think I'm only going to have time to do one a week this season, but I do want to get you guys some commentary, some of my views on this wonderful, wonderful meta that we call DPP, that we call the Gen 4 OU metagame, which has become, luckily, a staple in PSL action. It's no secret I think this is the best metagame of Pokemon to ever come out. The only tweak I think that could be made is probably to allow team preview. Okay, that is a completely false statement. There's plenty of tweaks that need to be made. It needs to be brought up to the standards of PokeMMO, and that they need to adopt new gen crit mechanics, new gen sleep mechanics. Thunder Wave mechanics are just absurd. You can paralyze electric Pokemon in Gen 4. So there are some things we're spoiled with on PokeMMO that we do not have in Gen 4. But other than that, I think it's the lack of team preview that I think could really turn this metagame into just something so much more than stellar. Right now, it's just stellar. It's not too bad of a designation to have. I've gotten way off track. What I mean to say is that on this Thursday night, instead of dueling Explos, who instead of duel, he would rather go out and you know go out and drink and stuff like that. Good for him. I live in a town with about 20,000 people in it, and about 80% of them are men. So I will be staying in tonight and providing you guys with my first DPP commentary of the season. It was a tough choice up to this point. There have been some good battles. There have been some good ones that I could comment on. I chose this one largely randomly. I could have done sweets, I guess. I didn't want to do modals versus Batooms because that was kind of a, I mean, what do I comment on about it? Oh, wow, Credilli's really fucking good. No, this one I figure is a good one. It was relatively evenly matched until one person kind of pulled away at the end. Was it based on luck? I mean, Spain's mentioned in the thread that he hit 7 out of 7 fire blasts. That's surely never happened before. As we go through this, I can be honest with you, I've only watched this replay once. It was on my phone. It was in my office. I wasn't supposed to be watching it, so I probably didn't pay good enough attention to it to really give you guys a lot of substance on this replay. But nevertheless, we'll dive right in. We'll see what's going on here. Let's go to normal speed so we can see what's going on. So Spain's going to start with a Zelf. I feel like Spain starts with one of the Azelf, Uxie, Mesprit trio pretty much 80% of the time. And just because I just said that, he will likely bring Stall versus me in our matchup, which is never good. But it's certainly something that Spain does a lot, and for good reason. I mean, they're so versatile. There's so many different things you can do. They're very reliable as a lead. I mean, there are very few instances where an Azelf lead is not at least going to get rocks up, or oftentimes prevent the opponent from getting rocks up, thanks to Taunt. So we've got, this one looks to be a Trick Band. Yeah, it's going to be Trick Band Azelf. It's going to immediately Trick Fortress that Choice Band. The only reason I'm apprehensive about lead Trick Azelf is that one of my favorite things to do against lead Azelf is to immediately bring in some form of Choice Tyranitar. Just by bringing him in, you're going to get rid of the Sash, thanks to Sandstorm Tick, and you're going to put him in a Pursuit Trap situation. If he tricks you, if you trick a band, or sometimes a Scarf, I've seen trick Scarf Azelf too, if you trick on that first turn and you trick into a Tyranitar, you're dead. You lose, and you've done very little, if anything, to hamper the other the opponent's Tyranitar. So, I mean, I guess the argument could be you probably lose regardless if the opponent's carrying Scarfed or Banded T-Tar, unless you're going to U-turn out, which is something he obviously, I would assume, with a Choice Band has U-turn. Usually it's U-turn, Zen Headbutt, Explosion, and Trick maybe. He may be carrying something like Stealth Rock for after he tricks his band. Why don't we check it out? So this Fortress is now banded. It's stuck on Stealth Rock. It had to go to a Metagross here, which is always maybe not very dangerous, knowing that it was choice banded. Before you know what set Azelf is, you always have to be conscious of that Fire Blast. Skarmory's going to come in here. I think that's probably a pretty safe matchup here for Spain's, but, Oltan managed to get his rocks up, and all he has is a slightly hampered Fortress, but with a very powerful Gyro Ball. Skarmory's going to throw spikes up. You're almost always, is Skarmory there, you're almost always going to get something switching into you that can one-hit KO you, whether it's Heat Rain, whether it's Rotom, whether it's Jolteon. You usually, when you bring a Skarmory in early, sometimes Magnezone, when you bring a Skarmory in early, you got to be really careful. And, you know, Spain laid some spikes, got out of there, and brings in his Blissey on this Heatran. One of the things, if any of you guys have played Gen 4, which I'm sure some of my 5 listeners have probably dabbled, you'll notice that Heatran is a very strong special attacker that is not necessarily walled by Blissey. It's one of those special attackers that, quite frankly, we miss in PokeMMO. It could be likened to something like Executor, except with far superior defensive typing. That does leave it admittedly wide open to Earthquake. But what Heatran can do is it can hit very hard with special attacks, but it can also explode. And that explosion is strong enough, especially in this gen, without our Gen 6 explosion that we have in PokeMMO. That explosion halves your opponent's defense. I believe that's the rule. So, that explosion is going to dent everything, even if you're timid. I mean, you don't even have to, timid or modest or something, you don't even have to adjust your nature for that explosion to still put a huge chunk in anything that would otherwise be able to handle Heatran's superior power and coverage. That means Blissey can't just brainlessly switch into Heatran all that much. I mean, the next time that Oltan's showing that Heatran, Spaint may be wanting to switch Blissey in and get rocked with an explosion, and that's never, most people will trade one of their special attackers for their opponent's only way of dealing with special attackers. All right, so I've noticed already this is a pretty common team from Spaint. This core right here, your Skarmory, Blissey, and Rotom core, is going to kind of your Scroatsy core, I guess, if you wanted to lump those together. Your Scroatsy core is going to be pretty popular in Gen 4. You got your electric moves covered with Rotom. You got your fighting moves covered here with Rotom, whereas, Dark's going to be not very effective against Steel. It's a really good core. You're weak to a little bit, offensive water, physical water. Skarmory isn't the most reliable Choice Band Swampert check I've ever seen. So that's certainly something to worry about. But that's a pretty small hole to leave, and you've got 3 other team slots to patch that up. Oltan running a cool PokeMMO team here, plus Heatran. It's nice to see Snorlax get some love in DPP. You don't generally see it too often. He's going to double switch into his Heatran. Had to see Skarmory coming. It's pretty easy predict to make when you've got your Snorlax out. Spain's running what looks like to be a pretty common stall team, which means he can really play by the book. He doesn't need to do a lot of predicting. If he makes his switches, he should be safe enough to kind of let this match drag on and wear his opponent down, chip his opponent down. Oltan going to switch into Zelfin hard here onto a Suicune. I'm not a huge fan of that move. I mean, you get hit with a Surf and you lose probably 50% or more of your health, regardless of whether Suicune's invested. He's going to roar out Snorlax, which certainly wasn't a good result for him, or wasn't a good result for Spaint, I should say, because Snorlax is going to wall Suicune pretty hard. We've got a nice mixed Snorlax here that's going to rock a Fire Blast on this Skarmory. Looks to be a specially defensive Skarmory. If it's not even going to be 2, it's going to be like about 3 hit KO'd by that Fire Blast. So Skarmory's got a little especially defensive bulk. He's going to throw in Rotom here to try to spin block on Forretress. Oltan makes a good prediction of that happening. He's going to go ahead and throw up another round of spikes, and he's actually going to get 2 spikes off here. I guess Spaint may have been predicting the switch here to Heatran. I guess that's, Rotom is a pretty easy switch for Heatran for the most part. He could have Thunderbolted, though, and definitely taken some chip damage out. I mean, if you see this team right now, you have a layer of spikes and rocks down, and you got a Rotom out, all right? You're going to be able to take out that Forretress if it's going to stay in and keep spiking. You're probably going to 2-hit KO it with Thunderbolt. He has no real other switch for that Thunderbolt. I mean, Heatran's at 51%, and I believe it was actually more before it switched in. So you're going to be able to chip that down and force it to switch in, take the spikes and rocks damage, and take a Thunderbolt. Snorlax isn't going to want to come in on spikes again. Not at... Come on, Tooltip. Okay, you know what? Tooltip's not going to cooperate with me right now. Snorlax is at 63, yeah, so at 63% as we see a crit Surf demolished as Elf, which, again, I said is not a good switch into Suicune. That Snorlax isn't going to want to come in either. So I think the right move there was probably to stay in with Rotom and start hammering away with some Thunderbolts. I mean, this is a team very weak to Electric. I'm not seeing any ground types. I'm not seeing anything that even resists Electric typing. So, you know, Rotom should have been just kind of mashing there and forcing his Gengar to come in to try to revenge it. Gengar is going to hit pretty hard. I think it's pretty clear this Jirachi is Scarfed when it's going to stay in fearlessly on Gengar. I see a lot of people switch Scarf Jirachi into Gengar. I'm not sure that's always a great idea. We got a crit and Meteor Mash here. Doesn't appear to matter all that much because he's not going to be able to take him out with one more anyways. Start firing away those Thunderbolts, man. No, he's going to rest. All right, so what is his moveset here? Perhaps he's like a rest Will-O-Wisp Shadow Ball HP Ice or something. I don't know, Overheat. I don't know. Yeah, maybe it doesn't. It'd be very strange for a Rotom not to carry Thunderbolt. And you see Oltan basically just sitting here waiting for him to take his Fortress out, but Spain seems hesitant to do it against his main spin blocker, or with his main spin blocker. It doesn't make a ton of sense to me. Instead, he takes this opportunity to set up Crocoon, it looks like, which, I mean, you know, you're going to set up against this. All right, we missed what happened here. Snorlax is going to self-destruct. Okay, so that's a cool Snorlax. It's a Body Slam, Fire Blast, self-destruct. I didn't see what the last move was, but that's going to solve his Suicune problem, which actually would have done pretty well here against the rest of these Pokemon. Azelf's going to come in. Looks like the Azelf is faster than Gengar, so it just gets the U-turn in. Perhaps expecting Heatran or Fortress, or, I mean, honestly, if you've got this ultra strong, formerly banded Azelf, he knows it's a physical attacker. So I guess it's pretty easy for Spain to assume he's going to switch in one of his steel types there to take that Zen Headbutt. He does not, though, which leaves him quite vulnerable to this Gengar, which is just going to stick in here on this Blissey, forced to take a bunch of damage. Blissey usually doesn't have, I mean, unless Blissey's carrying like a special attacking move, it's not going to have too reliable of a way of hitting Gengar. But I guess it can just, yeah, it does. So it's got that Ice Beam. It's going to let Gengar kind of take its own health down with Life Orb. And oh, here's that explosion again. I don't think that crit mattered. 69% on a Blissey, that sounds about right. Well, like I said, it cuts Blissey's already horrific defense in half. So I think Gengar is going to probably kill regardless of that crit. So that leaves us in a nice 4-on-3 situation here to round this match out. Let's see how we get going here. We got the formerly banded, now Custapped Azelf coming in on Heatran. We now Scarf Heatran. That is apparent. So, you know, obviously Fire Blast, as you see right here. Let's go back to this, all right? So you've got this Blissey in here against this Gengar, which he tries a Focus Blast. Gengar is going to get whittled down here. You know, this Heatran, the only thing standing between this Heatran, this Scarfed Heatran, and a sweep is Blissey. So I think you got to be ultra careful. Like, you got a Gengar that can't sub anymore. Why not bring in something that's going to die to these rocks? Jirachi's not living 2 sets of spikes and rocks anyways. So why not bring in Jirachi here, sack it, and, you know, keep your Blissey. I mean, even if you think he's just going to Focus Blast again, I would probably go Jirachi there and sack him, right? I mean, is this 2020 hindsight at its mightiest? I mean, maybe Spain didn't take the time. I think it really is important in these PokeMMO matches because it is best of 1. We're not playing a best of 3. You got to take your time. You have to really analyze every move. And, you know, kind of every once in a while take a step back from the 2 Pokemon that are out and just take a look at his team and say, all right, what's gonna you know, mess with me the rest of this game? And if you're Spain right now and you look over here, you're going to see pretty quickly that a Heatran, even if it's not Scarfed, Heatran is going to have a really easy time cutting through the rest of your team. So I think you're going to have to try to salvage Blissey here. He obviously does not do that. Loses him to the explosion, and then watch as Heatran slices like a hot knife through butter through the rest of his team. I mean, we got probably a Sleep Talk Rotom. What's it going to do? Take him out with a Thunderbolt? You haven't shown Thunderbolt yet this game, I don't think. So I don't think that crit really mattered, aside from maybe a PP standpoint. But, you know, actually, Jirachi does live. Maybe that's why he kept Jirachi, because Jirachi does live those spikes. He's going to do what Jirachi does here. Get 1 flinch, but does not quite get that 2nd flinch. And then, of course, Garmray is going to be a sitting duck. So a nice win for Oltan. I thought it was an interesting team build. I think it was a nice attacking, constantly kept his opponent on his back foot team. But I think Spain is probably has a team pretty well designed to combat that. Maybe as a matter of advice, a spinner would be nice to kind of protect some of your more vulnerable. I mean, really, the only two Pokemon you have vulnerable to spikes or toxic spikes are Suicune, which has Rest, and Blissey, which has Natural Cure. So I guess you're really just vulnerable to hazards, about as much as any team is. I don't know. Maybe I think there were some plays he probably could have made. I think if he mashes Thunderbolt early on this Rotom, if he has Thunderbolt on that set, then he's going to be able to chip away a little bit and force a few more switches, and he may come out on top this game. So, anyways, that was some Week 1 action. I hope you enjoyed it. Nice win for Oltan and whatever team he's on. Rough loss for Spain and whatever team he's on. I will go ahead and try another one of these matches next week. If there's anything you guys want to see, if there's anything you guys want me to do different, let me know. Otherwise, this is Gun Thug, and I will catch you guys later.